It's disgusting,
says 682 as it prepares to crush the rabbit. But before 682 strikes, the rabbit begins to gnaw on the reptile's leg. SCP-682 immediately jumps backwards, roaring with pain. 524 starts hopping towards 682 and the reptile screeches, turns around and begins to run away. Hello everyone, in this SCP Exploration episode, we will be talking about SCP-524, also known as the omnivorous rabbit. But before we do, make sure to subscribe with notifications on, so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, as we will be talking about more interesting SCPs very soon. SCP-524 appears to be a common European rabbit which possesses white fur and symmetrical black markings on its body. The animal, which has been nicknamed Walter, is around 1 foot tall and weighs about 4 pounds, which is about average for its species. SCP-524 has never been observed in a wild environment and has not been tested with other rabbits, so it's unknown whether Walter exhibits normal social behavior. For example, if it is capable of burrowing, reproducing, and so on. Nonetheless, on first glance, 524 behaves as expected. The rabbit generally shies away from people, it moves by hopping, it squeals when it's afraid, and so on. However, SCP-524 has one major difference, which makes it anomalous. Whereas ordinary rabbits only eat herbage such as grasses, Walter is able to consume any material. To clarify, 524 eats in the same fashion and at the same speed as any other member of its species, but it can eat substances that are not only inedible, but also highly dangerous. For example, SCP-524 has been recorded chewing on wood, steel, glass, and on one occasion, several pounds of highly radioactive material. Also, 524 shows no adverse effects from anything it has consumed. And to top things off, SCP-524 can not only consume a wide range of weird objects, but for some reason, this rabbit can also consume its own body. From time to time, SCP-524 will begin chewing on its own tail, slowly eat up past its back legs, and up towards its head. When it reaches up past its front legs and neck, SCP-524 somehow manages to flip its entire mouth inside out, consuming its entire head and disappearing completely. But roughly 30 minutes later, Walter reappears near the spot it had eaten itself, completely whole and totally unharmed. Unfortunately, it's unknown how SCP-524 gained the ability to consume any material and where the rabbit originates from. The only information we find in its wiki article relates to its discovery. Walter was found during a major blackout when it had disrupted a large power plant by chewing through several nuclear reactors. Of course, SCP-524 was taken by the Foundation right away and has been in custody ever since. Despite of Walter's ability, the rabbit isn't actively hostile, so the creature is more or less free to roam around its containment facility. However, SCP-524 must be kept under surveillance in order to prevent accidental damage to any vital material within the site. And when it's not under the direct care of a personnel member, 524 may be kept in a specially designed pen, roughly 15 by 15 feet in size, with sensors that notify of any escape attempts. Having seen that SCP-524 can consume anything, the scientists wanted to see if Walter can eat tissue from a specific SCP that's believed to be indestructible, namely 682. A sample from the reptile was taken, and SCP-524 consumed it without any difficulty. At this point, the researchers were curious how the rabbit would fare against the real SCP-682. Of course, on first glance, this would be catastrophic, because 524 would be terminated in an instant. However, we've seen that Walter can eat itself and reappear out of nowhere, totally unharmed. So having assumed that SCP-524 would survive, the scientists conducted the test. A D-Class was instructed to pick up SCP-524 and bring it into 682's containment chamber. The prisoner enters, places the rabbit on the floor and quickly exits, while the reptile is still recovering from the hydrochloric acid it has just been taken out of. But SCP-682 quickly regains its full capabilities, turns around and begins to inspect the rabbit.
What is this?
Says 682, as the rabbit is innocently hopping around in front of it.
It's disgusting.
The reptile lifts one of its limbs in preparation for crushing SCP-524, but before 682 strikes, Walter hops up to the reptile's other leg and begins to gnaw on it. SCP-682 immediately jumps backwards, roaring with pain and anger. The reptile stands still, staring at 524 with astonishment, but Walter is hungry for more, so the rabbit starts hopping towards 682 once again. Amazingly, the reptile vocalizes a screeching sound, most likely out of fear, and instead of attacking SCP-524, 682 turns around and begins to run away. But Walter persists and begins to chase SCP-682 around the containment chamber. From time to time, the reptile turns around, sees that the rabbit is still chasing, vocalizes another screech and continues running. This pursuit continues for 2 minutes, at which point SCP-682 runs towards one of the walls, jumps and climbs 12 feet up beyond 524's reach. At this point, seeing as there's no way up, Walter ceases pursuit and begins washing its face with its paws. In the meantime, SCP-682 remains up the wall, unmoving and terrified. This continues for 15 minutes, after which Walter becomes distracted, hops to the other side of the test chamber and begins to breach containment. Of course, the researchers didn't want SCP-682 to escape, so a D-Class was sent in right away to extract the rabbit. And as expected, the reptile climbed down only after SCP-524 was taken out of the testing chamber. Subsequent attempts to interview 682 about the encounter have failed, because the reptile refused to comment on SCP-524, so it looks like we will never understand why 682 was afraid of a simple rabbit. Who knows, maybe Walter's looks are deceiving, and a much more dangerous creature hides behind this cute rabbit appearance. This concludes our video on SCP-524. So what do you think? Why was SCP-682 so afraid of 524? And what do you want us to explore next? Let us know in the comments below. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, as we will be discussing more interesting SCPs very soon. And as always, we will see you in the next video.